we have sort of an implicit institutionalized understanding of that with college degrees.
Yeah, the college degrees for most professions are proxies.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Small Talk Window, where the host and his guest have just a small window of time to dispense with the small talk as quickly as possible and settle into a meaningful conversation around the world of work. And my guest today is Steven Rothberg, who is founder and Chief Visionary Officer, which is a really cool title, at College Recruiter. Welcome, Steven.
Hey, Brent, it's great to be here with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Really love the green room time, by the way. And this isn't the Tonight Show, but we still do have a green room here at Small Talk Window. And we're here to talk about something pretty interesting today. Stephen shared an article with me, and I had seen it on the periphery, but I was focused on other things at the time. It's from the Wall Street Journal, and I don't have the title in front of me right now, so I'm not going to read it for folks. But the basic gist is that the reporting is that organizations, corporations, and other types of organizations, they're hiring less for roles that require or that have traditionally required or conventionally required bachelor's degrees. Mm-hmm. And that was really interesting to me, Stephen, because I've had sort of my own thoughts around that. I watched one really interesting part of it, a long-form podcast with Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank and also Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs, and they were talking about, the trades and these sorts of things. And so that's one angle here, but you shared an interesting angle around this as well. So, and we want to get into that. But first, Stephen, maybe you could just share with our audience a little bit of your background, what College Recruiter is all about,
Sure.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah, no sweat. Grew up in Winnipeg, Canada, right dead center in the middle. Coldest city in the world with more than 500,000 people. So after college, I became the first person in Minnesota history to ever have moved here for the weather. I founded the company that College Recruiter grew out of a little over 3 decades ago, so we've been around for a while. College Recruiter is a job search site, so think Indeed, LinkedIn, etc., but for the early career audience, students, recent graduates, looking for a job while they're in school, part-time internship, seasonal, those sorts of jobs, or maybe their first or second job after graduation. Our customers are mostly large employers that are hiring at scale, hiring high volume. Still live in Minneapolis, married, 3 adult kids, and 1 hyper-bonded dog.
What kind of dog is it?
He is a half spaniel, that's the dumb side, and half poodle, that's the side that I prefer to think of the hyper-bondedness as coming from, but the reality is it's coming from the spaniel side. And so he's a cockapoo.
That's great. We have a dog. She's very, very ever so slight amount of pit bull, but mostly a Shar-Pei. I think I think pit bulls are kind of like the Genghis Khan of the dog world. It seems like every dog is just ever so slightly pit bull, but this is one of the goofiest dogs. She's so kind and very intelligent. But if you've ever seen a Shar-Pei, they have the goofiest face you've ever seen in your life.
They're adorable. They're absolutely adorable.
Yeah. Well, let's get into this
Sure.
this article here. What are your thoughts? You had a really interesting angle, and I want to get into that. But what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so the headline of the article and most of it was about, it basically said, or I think most people read it as saying, that employers are hiring fewer people with college degrees. And when I read the article, given that early career space that we're in, and knowing how large employers that we mostly work with, they're the ones that hire most college students and recent grads. It's like, this doesn't strike me as being right. And when I kind of started to read between the lines, I think that the journalist who wrote it didn't do, or perhaps the editors, just didn't do a good job of really clarifying. It's not so much that employers are hiring fewer students and recent grads. It's that employers are not requiring bachelor's degrees as much. So, the classic example in what you and I were emailing about was, car salespeople. Lots of college students and recent grads go into sales. It's actually the number one occupational field for those with a college degree. And historically, if you wanted to go work at a car dealer and you saw a job posting ad, it probably said 4-year college degree required. I've never understood why employers required that other than just trying to limit the number of applicants, which is not a good thing. But now more and more employers are saying something like 4-year college degree or equivalent work experience. And they're being more inclusive. A lot of them will say something like military or, other sales experience or whatever. That's giving them a better applicant pool.
You said inclusive. That's obviously inclusion. That's the inclusion part of DE&I. And we had an interesting.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros. Word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Sort of back and forth around that. I know you have a little bit of a take on that also.
Yeah, when employers create sort of these false litmus tests, you have to have a 4-year college degree because a lot of them will say that shows that you're a hard worker. Like, you can't tell me that somebody who has worked for 3 years in a restaurant kitchen or who served 6 years overseas for the Army is not a hard worker. So there are other equivalent ways of measuring that. There are certainly occupations that you do require a college degree for, or perhaps a master's or whatever. Think engineer, nurse, right? Where you actually have to have a license. You have to have that degree in order to be licensed. Fair enough. But when you require a college degree, what you immediately do is get rid of, when you're looking at Gen Z or Alpha as the next generation is being called, you're immediately getting rid of about 45% of the applicant pool. So if you're an employer that wants to hire the best, the last thing you should be doing is saying, I won't even consider 45% of the candidates.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There are many ways to measure. There are many indicators of someone being a hard worker, somebody that can learn things and is willing to put in the elbow grease to succeed. And the car salesperson, is the perfect example. I mean, sales, even sales. Just I can think of maybe a few areas where you might really want to have a college degree to go into sales in a few industries, but a lot of sales is just, you have to just have a quick mind and also just sort of a knack for people and understanding, how to close. And there's a wealth of information out there that you can just kind of be self-taught with sales as well. I mean, I'm always going out there and trying to learn, things about, this or that in my industry. And you can really be self-taught these days in all sorts of areas. There's one other thing you mentioned around, like an engineer. And obviously you need to be trained in that. There's a very set sort of methodical way to learn it. There's all sorts of programs out there at the university level that make sense. This is kind of a wild, crazy sort of prediction, and in 50 years when I'm gone, we can see whether I was right or wrong. But anyway, it might be less than 50 years. But anyway, when I'm gone. but anyways, where I think that maybe we're moving to a model where it might not be college unless it's STEM. or at some point, and all the rest, or maybe very, like an English literature type of liberal arts well, it might be a vacation, but education, and these sorts of things. I mean, and we have one last point I'd like to get your sort of feedback on this is we have a lot of organizations out here that corporations that they have their own sort of apprenticeship programs. What's your thought? What are your thoughts around that? I mean, to me, it seems like we're moving finally with this institutionalized sort of groupthink that you have to have a university degree to even get an appointment to possibly get one of these jobs is might be falling away.
Yeah. So first, I'm a huge proponent of education. I think if you are able to go to school, whether it's a 2-year program, 4-year, master's, whatever. I have a graduate degree. My wife has a graduate degree. 2 of our 3 kids have bachelor's degrees. One of them is on his way to a graduate degree. So we are strong believers in going to college and university. But for too many decades, that was the only path into the professional workforce. So I love the fact that more and more employers are hiring out of boot camps, ex-military, even people coming out of prison, etc. Apprenticeships are huge in Europe. Like you look at Germany, and not even just for trades, but in tons of different occupations, employers will bring in like high school students or recent grads, and you work for them for a year or 2 as an apprentice. And basically it's on-the-job training is kind of what it is. And then when you finish that, you kind of have the equivalent of what we in the U.S. would call a certification. You've successfully completed that apprenticeship. Probably you're going to stay with that employer. But the expectation there is that you're going to come in with little to no work skills, things that are required for the job, and you're going to leave being not a master or an expert, but highly competent. And that's great, not just in trades, electricians, plumbers, etc., but it's great in a whole variety of occupations. Like think medical assistants. Do we really need to go to school to learn how to take somebody's blood pressure? Or can we learn that on the job with proper supervision?
That's a great point. It really comes down to it. We're, this being Small Talk Window, we have sort of a limited amount of time, so we're kind of reaching the end of our time here today. But I do want to mention, you made me think of something here. The portability of credentials, and an expansion of the concept of what legitimate credentials are. I mean, I think that might be the next sort of attitudinal shift that we need to maybe sort of with some intentionality bring about. Because if you've done an apprenticeship at, say, I'll just throw out ABC Corporation,
sure,
Megalith Corporation, and then you want to go to XYZ, or Acme for the older ones around us, with the Looney Tunes, right? There needs to be some sort of a shared sort of trust there, where I'm going to trust that ABC Corporation, Megalith, a credential from there, and that I've learned computer coding, for instance, is going to apply when I go to Acme, right? I mean, and we have sort of an implicit institutionalized understanding of that with college degrees.
Yeah, the college degrees for most professions are proxies, right? Yeah. If you have a degree in marketing, then you must have some level of competency in marketing. And generally that's true, but wouldn't it be better to use like a standardized assessment, not something like Myers-Briggs, but something where you actually test somebody? Do you know how to socially share in an effective manner? Have you done this kind of work? Are you competent at doing X, Y, and Z? These are the tasks that you're going to need to do in our workforce. Let's measure to see how good you are at them. And if you happen to have acquired those skills at a university or in an apprenticeship or in a boot camp or in the Air Force, who cares? You have those skills, and that's what we want to pay you for.
You're absolutely right. And I think maybe assessments could be the topic of our next episode together, Steven. This has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for joining me today for this episode of Small Talk Window.
It's been a pleasure. Cheers, Brent.